All right, get ready, because today we're going deep, deep into the story of Abraham.
Oh, a good one.
Yeah, he's a pivotal guy in the Bible. And his story really makes you think about faith, you know?
It sure does.
And like, what does it even mean to follow a higher calling?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a story that just grabs you, and it has for centuries.
Right. Why is that?
I think it's because Abraham's life, it's like full of drama, these intense encounters with God.
Yeah, well, those are wild.
And these profound lessons about trust, obedience, and what God's covenant with humanity is all about.
So we're basing this deep dive on
All right, the source material.
a YouTube video. It's from Bible Unbound called The Complete Story of Abraham, the Father of Nations.
I've seen that one.
Yeah, but, and this is important, we're not just retelling the story. No
We're
way.
going deeper.
We're going way beyond just the surface level stuff.
Uncovering those deeper meanings.
Yeah, the nuances, the questions that make Abraham's story so
That's compelling, right?
and telling. It really pulls you in.
And that's the key.
So, you ready to kick it off?
Let's do it.
All right, picture this. Centuries after the Tower of Babel, we've got humanity scattered, communications a mess. Instead of worshiping the one true God,
They've forgotten him?
they're turning to idols they've made. It's a world completely steeped in like polytheism, multiple gods everywhere.
It's like they just completely forgot about the one true God.
It's kind of a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, and that's the world Abraham is born into.
Wild, right?
And here's what's even more fascinating. Abraham and his whole family, they're part of this polytheistic culture at the beginning.
Really?
Yeah. They weren't worshiping the God we read about in the Bible.
Interesting.
So this makes his eventual embrace of monotheism, that's the belief in one God, even more extraordinary.
So it's like a total 180, right? Imagine you're raised with a certain belief system your entire life.
Your whole worldview.
Yeah, and then boom, this profound realization hits you that everything you thought you knew was totally wrong.
Yeah.
And it's not just that. You're called to leave everything you know, your home, everything that's comfortable,
And journey to a new land.
all based on this completely new belief.
It's a radical leap of faith.
It's huge.
And this call, it comes straight from God.
Wow.
He tells Abraham to leave his home in Ur to travel to a land he's never even seen before.
That's intense.
It's Canaan, the promised land. I mean, talk about a leap of faith, leaving everything behind, going into the unknown, just because God said so.
Seriously, what kind of courage does that take? I don't know if I could do that.
And his father, Terah, doesn't exactly make it easier on him.
Oh, no.
No. So they start heading to Canaan together,
Okay.
but then they just stop.
Stop.
Yeah, in a place called Haran. It's like Terah got cold feet, couldn't quite bring himself to fully embrace this new path, you know?
That's such a human thing, though, you
Yeah.
know, to hesitate when things get scary, especially when it comes to changing your whole belief system. Like, traditions are hard to break.
That's so true. I think that hesitation is symbolic, too.
In what way?
It foreshadows the doubts and challenges Abraham's going to face on his journey.
Yeah.
Because leaving behind the familiar, especially those really ingrained religious beliefs, it's tough.
Yeah. It really makes you wonder, if I were in that situation, would I have the guts to follow that inner voice, you know, even if it meant going against everything I've always known?
It's a test of character, for sure.
Big time.
And remember, at this point, he's not even Abraham yet.
No, yeah.
His name is still Abram.
Abram, what's that mean?
It means exalted father.
Exalted father. So like a hint of the role he's going to play.
Yeah, exactly. Almost like a preview.
That's so cool. It's like destiny is calling, but he doesn't even know the half of it.
But God knows.
God knows. And even though Abram and his family haven't been worshiping the right God.
They've been worshiping other gods.
Right. God chooses him anyway.
Extends this incredible invitation to a covenant, a special relationship
Wow.
that's going to change history as we know it.
Talk about divine grace.
It really challenges that idea that God's only looking for the people who've always been faithful.
Absolutely. It's like a second chance, even when you've been messing up.
Right.
It's pretty amazing.
So Abram sets off for Canaan with his wife, Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all their stuff.
Right. The whole crew.
But it's not an easy journey.
Of course not.
They run into famine, have to make tough choices, and encounter situations that really put Abram's faith to the test.
It's almost like these trials are refining him, you know?
Yeah.
Like getting him ready for the big purpose he has ahead of him.
Absolutely. It highlights something really important about faith. It's not just passively believing. It's about actively engaging with the challenges and uncertainties that life throws at you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Those difficulties, they reveal Abram's flaws, his capacity for doubt, but also his resilience and his unwavering commitment to the covenant with God.
It's like we see him being molded, right?
Yeah.
Becoming the person he's meant to be.
Yeah, and one of those uh-oh moments happens when they get to Egypt.
Oh, what happens in Egypt?
There's a famine going on.
Right.
And Abram, he's scared. He tells the Pharaoh that Sarai is his sister, not his wife.
Whoa. That's a big lie.
I get it. He was afraid. But it's not exactly a shining moment of integrity.
No kidding. Sometimes fear makes us do crazy things.
It's a classic example of human weakness. But it also reminds us that even the people chosen by God, they're not perfect.
Right. They're still human.
They make mistakes, they stumble, and sometimes they choose self-preservation over honesty.
It's reassuring in a way, right?
But here's what's important. It's through those missteps that we see how deep God's mercy is.
Because, of course, there are consequences.
Oh, yeah.
Pharaoh takes Sarai into his household, but God's not having it. He steps in with plagues, forces Pharaoh to see the truth, and let Abram and Sarai go.
It's like a cosmic wake-up call.
Don't mess with God's chosen people.
Those plagues are powerful symbols of God's protection and his absolute commitment to that covenant, even when Abram stumbles.
Yeah.
It shows that God's plan is going to win in the end, even when humans try to mess things up.
It's reassuring.
Yeah, so despite all that, God reaffirms his promise to Abram, a promise that seems impossible.
Right, because back then, a big family meant you were blessed.
Right.
But Abram and Sarai, they're getting older, and still, no kids.
And this is where we see just how awesome God's power really is.
Lay it on me.
He promises Abram that he'll have a son.
Yeah.
Not just any son, a son whose descendants will be as many as the stars in the sky.
That's crazy. To believe in a promise like that when everything seems stacked against you, it's like, what even is faith? Is it blind belief? Or is it this deep trust in something we can't even grasp?
That's a question that runs through this whole story.
It's deep.
And one that we'll keep exploring as we go.
Okay, so they have this incredible promise, but waiting.
Yeah.
Waiting is hard, especially for Sarai.
Oh, it gets interesting.
And that's where things really start to get interesting. We'll dig into that in part 2.
Welcome back to our deep dive on Abraham. Last time we left Abram and Sarai, well, they were wrestling with this huge promise from God.
A son and descendants as numerous as the stars, right?
Right, but they were also dealing with getting older.
Yeah, like how is this even going to work?
Exactly. It's this clash between this incredible promise and their human limitations.
I can only imagine the tension, the hope, the doubt. It must have been overwhelming.
Totally. And it's in this context that Sarai, well, she gets desperate.
I bet.
Maybe she even thinks she's helping God out a bit.
Yeah.
She suggests that Abram, take her servant Hagar as a wife.
To have a child.
Yes. It makes sense. Right. From a human point of view.
Yeah, I can see the logic.
But I think we both know it's not going to be that simple.
Oh, I'm sure things are about to get complicated.
It's like clockwork. Every time humans try to force God's hand with these divine promises, things get messy.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. This is no exception.
So what happens?
Hagar does get pregnant and gives birth to a son.
Ishmael.
Yes, Ishmael. But he's not the son promised in the covenant.
Like they try to take a shortcut, right? God, you said a son, but you're taking too long, so we'll just, make it happen ourselves.
But God's got his own plan, his own timing.
And I'm sensing he's not too happy about this little workaround.
You got it. God reaffirms his covenant with Abram, and he even changes his name to Abraham.
Abraham. Does that have special meaning too?
It does. It means father of many nations. And to seal the deal, to make this unbreakable bond official,
Okay.
God institutes circumcision for Abraham and all his descendants.
That's a pretty permanent sign of commitment.
It's a powerful symbol. It's like God saying, look, I mean it. I'm marking you and your family as my chosen people, and I'll fulfill my promise in my way, in my time.
So the name change, the circumcision, it's like starting a new chapter, right? A deeper commitment.
Exactly. A tangible mark of belonging, setting him and his descendants apart.
Okay, so we're back on track, right? Abraham was going to have this promised son with Sarah. His legacy is secured. But if there's one thing we know about the Bible, it's that things rarely stay calm for long.
You're telling me.
So what happens next?
Well, the story takes a turn. We're shifting focus to these cities, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh, yeah, those names, they don't exactly have the best reputation.
Notorious for wickedness, depravity. Remember Lot? Abraham's nephew.
Yeah, the one who got captured in that war.
Right, him. He decided to settle near these cities, maybe not knowing how bad they were.
Poor Lot, always in the thick of it.
Right, first the war, now this.
So what happens with Sodom and Gomorrah?
God decides to step in.
Cool.
He reveals his plan to Abraham. He's going to destroy those cities as judgment for their wickedness.
It's a stark reminder that God's patience has limits.
Absolutely. Actions have consequences.
But knowing Abraham, he's not just going to sit back and watch this happen, right?
Yeah.
He's got to try something.
You're right. He pleads with God to spare the cities.
To show mercy.
Yeah, if even a small number of righteous people can be found.
It shows how much he cares. Even for these people who have clearly gone astray.
It's an amazing display of compassion and a willingness to fight for what's right, even when it seems impossible.
He's like a lawyer for humanity, making the case for mercy.
And God listens. He engages in this dialogue with Abraham, lowering the number of righteous people needed to save the cities.
Like a negotiation.
Yeah, exactly. He starts at 50, then 45, then 40, all the way down to 10.
Wow. It's like he's giving them every chance.
This back and forth shows the tension between God's justice and his mercy, a theme we see a lot in the Bible.
Yeah. It makes you think about how God balances those things.
But unfortunately, they can't even find 10 righteous people.
Oh, no.
God sends 2 angels to Sodom to check things out.
To investigate.
And they're met with hostility, the worst of humanity.
Like, how bad are we talking?
The men of Sodom, they demand that Lot hand over the angels so they can assault them.
That's horrific. It's hard to even imagine such depravity. Where does that kind of darkness even come from?
It's a question that's haunted us forever. But the angels, they realize the danger. They blind the mob and help Lot and his family escape.
So they're spared.
But the next morning, fire and brimstone rain down on Sodom and Gomorrah.
It's a terrifying image.
It wipes them out, leaving only a smoldering wasteland. It's a harsh lesson about the consequences of unchecked wickedness.
But you also feel a sadness, right? For the loss of life, the potential.
Absolutely. It's sobering. But it also highlights the importance of living right, of standing up against evil.
So Abraham sees all this, the destruction, God's judgment. He's faced challenges, made mistakes, seen the results of human choices. It's like he's lived a lifetime in just a few years.
And he's not done yet. The story takes another turn, maybe the most challenging one of all, the binding of Isaac.
This is the big one, right?
It's a story that's captivated people for ages. It raises huge questions about faith, obedience, and the mysteries of God's will.
And we'll get into all of that
when we come back for the final part of our deep dive.
All right, welcome back. We left off on quite the cliffhanger last time.
Oh yeah, we're about to dive into the binding of Isaac.
The binding of Isaac, that's one of those stories,
Oh, it's a tough one.
It's heavy stuff.
It makes you question everything.
It really does. It pushes us to confront some really big questions about faith, like how far does obedience go?
And the mysteries of God's will. I mean, what is he thinking sometimes?
Seriously. So remind me, how does this whole thing even start? Does God just out of the blue tell Abraham to sacrifice his son?
Pretty much. God tells Abraham to take Isaac, his son, the one he waited so long for, to Mount Moriah and offer him up as a burnt offering.
Whoa, hold on. After everything they've been through, the promises, the covenant, it just seems so cruel.
I know, right?
What could possibly be the point of asking for something like that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's been debated for centuries. It really makes you think about the limits of faith. Where do you draw the line between obedience and your own moral compass? And honestly, sometimes God's ways are just beyond our understanding.
Totally. So what does Abraham do? Does he argue? Does he beg for Isaac's life?
The text just says he gets up early, prepares the wood, the donkey, everything.
No hesitation.
Nope. He just sets off with Isaac and 2 servants.
Wow. It's almost creepier that he doesn't put up a fight, This silent acceptance of this horrible task is just unsettling.
You get this sense of dread, like something terrible is about to happen and you can't stop it.
It's heavy. And then there's that conversation they have on the way to Mount Moriah. Isaac asks about the lamb for the sacrifice.
And Abraham says, God himself will provide the lamb, my son.
Chills. Literal chills. Knowing what's about to happen, that line takes on a whole new meaning. It's like a foreshadowing of something much bigger.
Right. A connection to Jesus as the Lamb of God, the ultimate sacrifice.
It's powerful stuff. But in that moment, it's just Abraham and Isaac facing this impossible situation. They get to the spot. Abraham builds an altar, arranges the wood, binds Isaac, and puts him on the altar.
It's a tough scene to read.
It's heartbreaking. He takes the knife. He's ready to obey.
It's a turning point, not just in Abraham's story, but in the whole Bible. It's a test of faith pushed to the extreme, a moment that's echoed throughout history, in religion, in art, in our own lives.
Okay, so does he actually do it? Does he go through with it?
Just as he's about to, an angel calls out from heaven, stops him right at the last second.
Oh, thank God.
A true divine intervention. The angel tells Abraham that God sees his unwavering obedience.
Can you imagine the relief? The gratitude? I bet he was also pretty confused.
And just like Abraham said, God provides a ram stuck in a thicket to be sacrificed instead of Isaac.
So like a substitute.
Exactly, showing God's mercy, his rejection of human sacrifice.
Okay, so everyone's safe. But why? Why put Abraham through all that? What was the purpose?
That's the heart of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are a lot of interpretations. Some people focus on obedience, that Abraham was willing to do the unthinkable because God asked him to.
To show his complete submission.
Yeah, it highlights how important it is to surrender to a higher power, even if we don't get it.
It's a powerful testament to Abraham's faith.
Others focus on God's mercy, how he would never actually let Abraham hurt Isaac. The test was more about showing Abraham's heart, his willingness to give up everything, and God's provision in the end.
So a test of trust.
And then there's the connection to Jesus, the Lamb of God who takes away our sins. Christians see the binding of Isaac as a foreshadowing of God sacrificing his own son.
Right, the willingness to obey the Father, the substitutionary offering, the themes of resurrection, it all ties in.
It's amazing how this one story has so much depth, so many layers of meaning.
It's a story that stays with you. Okay, so after this intense ordeal, what happens to Abraham? Does he finally get to relax a little?
He lives a long life, dies at 175, but he does go through another loss. Sarah dies at 127.
Oh, that's sad. They went through so much together.
Abraham mourns her deeply. He buys a cave from a Hittite guy named Ephron to bury her.
Okay.
And there's this detail that seems small, but is actually really significant.
Tell me more.
Abraham insists on paying the full price for the cave, even though Ephron offers it for free.
Really?
He wants to make it clear that he owns the land. It foreshadows how important land ownership will be for his descendants.
Ah, so it's not just a burial place, it's a claim to the promised land.
Exactly. It's a step towards fulfilling that promise God made about his offspring inheriting the land.
Okay, so Isaac is the chosen heir. But what about Ishmael, the son Hagar had? What happens to him?
God blesses Ishmael too, says he'll be the father of 12 princes and a great nation.
So both sons are blessed, even though Isaac carries the main covenant promise.
Right, it's like two branches of the family tree, both stemming from this one incredible man.
It shows that God's blessings can reach further than we think, to different people, different nations.
And then, after a long, eventful life, Abraham dies. Isaac and Ishmael bury him in the cave he bought for Sarah.
That's a beautiful image. Despite everything, they come together to honor their father.
It's a testament to family, to the connection they share, even though their paths are different.
And a fitting end to the story of a man who, despite his struggles, never gave up on his faith and left behind a legacy that still impacts us today.
His story shows the power of faith, the challenges of obedience, and the mystery of God's plan. It reminds us that even those chosen by God aren't perfect. They mess up, they doubt, they face tough choices, but through it all, their faith grows stronger.
It's a faith that's active, engaged with life's ups and downs. It's about trusting in something bigger than ourselves, even when we don't have all the answers.
And Abraham's story isn't just ancient history. It still influences billions of people around the world, makes them think about faith, morality, what it means to be human.
It's a story that stays with you, makes you think. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the story of Abraham. It's been a wild ride.
Absolutely. It's a story full of twists and turns and timeless lessons. Keep exploring it, read the Bible, see what others say about it. Let Abraham's journey inspire your own exploration of faith and meaning in life.